welcome to episode 5 of Two Gamers with Love, your weekly love letter to all things video games. My name is Justin, and this week we are diving into a massive new RPG exclusive to the Nintendo Switch. I'm talking about Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I'll be sharing my impressions and thoughts about this game and discussing some general RPG features that I feel are important to making a great role-playing game. So, top off your hit points, be sure to equip your accessories, and stock up on those curables. This is Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
I know this one by heart. Butterfly blade! White slash! Big impact! We're unstoppable with you around. Not to worry.
So this week we are talking about RPGs, or role-playing games. This goes all the way back to Dungeons & Dragons, which we discussed in episode 1 of this podcast, but RPGs are definitely one of my favorite genres of video games, and although I don't have as much time to play them these days because of just the sheer amount of video games that are around, I often gravitate towards this genre for many, many, many reasons. I have a lot of memories of my first video game kind of foray into video games being RPG experiences. And although I loved games like Super Mario Brothers and sort of more action, fun, just sort of like games that were fun to play, the memories that really stand out, the experiences that I really remember are from the role-playing games. Games like Secret of Mana, Earthbound, Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy 6, 7, 8, all of those. These are the games that really stay with me. And so I'm always on the hunt for a new, exciting RPG, a game that sort of scratches that itch, that isn't so daunting and overwhelming that I feel like I don't have time to play it, but is accessible enough that I can fit it into my life and actually enjoy the game. I love the stories that role-playing games have to offer, and I love sort of that system of like building up a character, right? I really enjoy that, where you invest and you kind of start from, scratch, and you kind of build this character to be your character and level them up and make them more powerful as you go. And that sort of flow, that progression, I think is really important for me when I'm playing these kinds of games. On top of that, these games tend to have really interesting stories. Some RPGs from specifically some of the ones I've played that are out of Japan, like the one we're going to be talking about today, have stories that are kind of over the top on purpose, kind of all sorts of plot twists and crazy characters and sort of all kinds of stuff going on that's just like wild. I'm thinking about like Kingdom Hearts, right? If you've heard anything about or played Kingdom Hearts, you know that the story in those games is very kind of twisty and turny and intertwined and all over the place. And it's a cool story, but it's not one that I've really experienced because I just haven't played those games all the way through. So I love the stories that RPGs tell. Probably the more kind of concise or succinct ones are more my speed. But usually it's just a story of, unlikely hero saves the world kind of thing. I'm thinking back to, like, I'll never forget playing Secret of Mana for the first time and just being an unassuming kid from a village who stumbles upon a magical sword and goes on this amazing journey of self-discovery and ultimately saving the world. That's really what I'm always after. So I don't need much more than that. But this week specifically, I want to talk about a game that I was determined not to buy because I've bought the other two in the series and never finished them. But I did pick it up, which is usually what happens to me. And I'm really, really enjoying it. And that's Xenoblade Chronicles 3. So that's where I want to start today, talking a little bit about what this game is and why I'm really digging it. So Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is really interesting because it is very much, aside from the sort of zany story, the battle system is really something to talk about. It's a very hectic game at first. And again, I'm not super, like, I haven't really played the other two in the series. I played them both. I played them, just never really finished them. Never got super far into them. So I had to watch like a primer video of the story leading up to Xenoblade Chronicles 3 because I just wanted to know what was going on in the game. But I think what drew me into the third part, and what might draw you in as well, if you're on the fence or you're thinking about picking this one up, is one, the scope of the game, and two, the battle system. It does some really interesting things visually, especially considering this is a Switch title. It looks incredible. Like the open world, the sort of expansive environments, the enemy types, the monsters, all of it is really, really, really well done. And it reminds me so much of Final Fantasy XI. It's very much that sense of a big open area to explore, monsters roaming around. You actually walk up to the monsters, you kind of target the monster, and then you start to auto attack the monster. It really reminds me so much of the battle system in Final Fantasy XI. More fast paced, there's more going on, but it's that same idea of you have skills on cooldowns. You're not necessarily watching a timer or an icon light up, although there is like a bar that kind of happens. The genius of Final Fantasy XI was that it was all just like, it wasn't like a visual cue. It was like a time. So you would hit an ability and it would say, you have 30 seconds before you can use that again in the text chat. But all that's quite minimal considering how much is happening on screen at one time. It's all really, really well done. But the feel of it is very much like Final Fantasy 12 or Final Fantasy 11. If you don't know, Final Fantasy 12 kind of drew on a lot of the, I guess you could say, sort of mechanics or feel of the battle system from 11. But that is really what drew me into this game, and in a lot of ways was what drew me into the other two games. But this one feels a lot more refined. Plus, they do some really interesting things in this game with like the characters and the weapons and the classes and things. But I'm not that far into it yet. But I just wanted to share some initial impressions because I was on the fence about this, and I think it's worth your time. I think you ought to check it out if you're interested. It's got some really fun mechanics, abilities. There's equip accessories, quests, side quests, main quests. All of it's really fun and exciting, and it's a good game. It definitely falls into that category of large-scale, compelling RPG experience that maybe you're looking for. Plus, I think it's really great on the Switch. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to buy it. I just got a Steam Deck, I have a PC, I have a PS5, but you can only play this particular game on the Switch, and it works really well. In fact, I prefer playing it in handheld mode on the OLED Switch than on the big TV because the resolution just is a little bit smaller, and the colors just really pop on the OLED Switch. So, yeah, check this one out. I'm really enjoying it. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. What kind of characteristics, what kind of features do you go for in RPG games when you play them? I know for me, some of the things that really draw me in are the story, of course, but I need to have like an interesting battle mechanic. Like the fights have to feel fun and interesting. And this game does that, I think, relying on auto attacking, and then sort of there's a lot of timing too to this battle system. Like if you it's called cancel attack, where you auto attack, and if you use your abilities right at the right moment, you kind of cancel your auto attack and go into your ability right away. So it's kind of it's quicker. So that's really interesting. And so the battle system is really good, and you can swap classes, you can equip gear and all sorts of stuff. So it's good. I also really dig like open worlds. I dig big places to explore, kind of gorgeous open vistas and hillsides and places like that I can kind of roam around in and kind of get lost. So all that's kind of neat too. And this game has all of that. It also has like over the top voice acting, which, it's very British. The actors kind of have this Britishness to them, which, you be the judge if you think that works or not. But let me know what you think. What are some of your favorite features of RPG games? What do you look for when you think about, taking the plunge into a new RPG adventure? And what are some of those things that draw you in? All right, so I found a great piece by IGN, pretty famous gaming website. Their top 100 RPG games of all time. That's a pretty comprehensive list, 100 of them. I don't think we need to go through all of them. There's some great ones on there, but I'll put the link in the description. You can check it out for yourself. But I thought it would be fun to go through the top 10 and just kind of see what we thought about the top 10 greatest RPGs of all time according to IGN. So coming in at number 10 is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Now, this one is interesting. I have a lot of friends who have played this and they love it and they really got into it. I struggled getting into this game and I never got very far into it. It might be a case of the game felt too big and there was just simply too much to do. But I do specifically remember going into like some kind of like underground cemetery where there were some skeletons, and I got stuck in there. I just kept dying, and I couldn't figure out how to defeat the enemies in there, and I was struggling, and I just kind of gave up in that part of the game. But I will say that I know this game is incredible, and people love it. Number 9 is really interesting. Vagrant Story, a classic from 2000 on the PlayStation 2. IGN's Zach Ryan writes, for all intents and purposes, Vagrant Story should not have been a PlayStation game. The sheer volume of systems interacting with each other and the top-notch graphics should have crippled Sony's little system. But somehow, we got to experience Yasumi Matsuno's dungeon-crawling masterpiece mere months before the PS2's US launch. Sorry, I misspoke. It was a PS1 game, but it came out towards the end of the PlayStation 1's life cycle. You play as Ashley Riot, a member of the elite Risk Breaker unit of the Valendia Knights of Peace. It's a great game. If you haven't played that, go check it out. I think you can find it on the PlayStation Classic, I think. So, coming in at number 8 is Diablo 2, recently re-released, remastered. I remember struggling to play this game on my PC as a kid, as a teenager. It was one of those games where I was like, oh, this seems really cool, but I don't know how to really do it because I don't really know how to do PC stuff. But I have tried the new one a little bit, and while it's not quite drawn me in the way that Diablo 3 has, I still really enjoy it. Coming in at number 7 might be one of my favorite video games of all time, and potentially the game that sort of showed me video games are something more than just fun toys. Released in 1993, so I was 11 years old, and I remember going to get this from Electronics Boutique at the mall, and I also bought the strategy guide for it because I was intimidated a little bit by this game. But Squaresoft released Secret of Mana in 1993, and what a classic. If you haven't played Secret of Mana, it's a beautiful game, incredible music, amazing story. You know, the band of unlikely heroes joins together to save the world. It's just incredible. Great battle system, super fun. Go play it. You can find it in a lot of different places. They've re-released it a couple of times. It's on the SNES Classic, a couple of other places. So go check that one out if you haven't yet. Number 3 is a game I really don't know about at all, but coming in at number 6, Planescape Torment. Chloe Rad writes on IGN that the creators of Planescape Torment aim to subvert RPG cliches from the start, and the result is what several critics have called one of the best written and most imaginative video games ever created. Despite being rooted in Dungeons & Dragons campaign setting and adhering to advanced D&D 2nd edition rules, so much of Planescape Torment is driven by sharp and engaging dialogue instead of combat. So if you're into that kind of thing, that could be the game for you. Coming in at number 5, and again, if it was me, I would replace number 5 with sort of a game that was also around at the same time that I think is leagues and miles better. But coming in at number 5 is World of Warcraft, released in 2004. Remember, Final Fantasy XI came out in the US around 2001-ish. So, a couple years before World of Warcraft saw its incredible success, there was Final Fantasy XI, which in my view is the greatest, RPG game ever made. But I never got super into WoW, but I know everyone loves it and it's a classic. So check that out, of course. Number 5, World of Warcraft. Number 4, we've got the classic Pokemon Yellow, right? Released all the way back in 1999. Who could forget booting up Pokemon for the first time and choosing your starter Pokemon and going on that adventure? My brother was actually super into Pokemon, more than I was. I've never quite gotten the bug of the sort of catch them all, collect the pets games. I struggle with those games a little bit because I want to be the thing. I don't want to be like the guy controlling the thing. I want to be the thing. So I don't know. I've just struggled with those. But Pokemon, of course, classic. And coming in at number 4, we've got Pokemon Yellow. Number 3. They're the greatest RPGs of all time. Baldur's Gate 2, Shadows of Amn. Baldur's Gate was classic. I mean, BioWare coming out in the year 2000, sort of a Dungeons and Dragons game. Baldur's Gate was incredible. I remember playing it. I remember loving it. It recently got a re-release on Steam. I'm not sure if it's held up, the test of time, but Baldur's Gate, those games were absolutely stunning, amazing back in the day. Coming in at the number 2 spot, the number 2 greatest RPG of all time, according to IGN, is Final Fantasy VI, which came out in 1994. And again, another Squaresoft title here. I will say Final Fantasy VI was definitely my first introduction to RPG games as a kid. I had a buddy and he introduced me to this. He was like, hey, this game's pretty cool. You should try this. And at that time, I wasn't into this type of game. I thought they were too hard, too challenging. They were more like adult-like, and I couldn't really get into them. I was more into Mario and stuff like that. But he was like, no, check this out. And I kind of learned how to play it with him a little bit, and we figured it out. And man, what an experience. So Final Fantasy VI was definitely... that was before Secret of Mana for me and all that. But this came like... This would really show me that like video games could be something more than just toys that I play with. And then I would have to 100% agree with the number one on the list here. Considered by many to be the greatest RPG of all time. And I will never forget playing it and falling in love with it and being shocked by its twists and turns and plot twists. And just what an incredible experience. You know, it released in 1995. I was 13. So, you know, the perfect moment to sort of experience this particular game. And I'll never forget playing it, you know, all Christmas that year. But we've got at number one, Chrono Trigger, the classic. And Megan Sullivan says this about Chrono Trigger. Over 20 years after Square's epoch-making epic launched on the SNES, we're still gobsmacked by its originality and ingenuity. The seamless transition between the world map full of visible, avoidable enemies and combat was a revelation in a time where most RPGs featured jarring random battles, and even today makes monster encounters a joy instead of a chore. The plucky courage and determination of its adolescent heroes, combined with the memorable art style of Akira Toriyama, makes for instantly memorable characters, and its brilliant introduction of time travel as both a storytelling vessel and a gameplay mechanic is proof that story and gameplay don't have to be mutually exclusive. Couple all this with multiple endings and one of the greatest game soundtracks ever made. And it's easy to see why Chrono Trigger is our top ranking RPG of all time. I could not agree more with Megan Sullivan there. The idea, when games can kind of marry together the gameplay that you're doing and the way they're trying to tell their story, instead of making those two things feel disparate, that is the mark of a master game, of a classic. I truly believe that. And I believe games offer an opportunity to do that in ways that other forms of entertainment medium simply cannot. So yeah, that was a good top 10 list. And I think you should check out the rest. There's 90 more games on that list. I'll give you a quick preview. Number 100 ends up being EverQuest. So another MMORPG. I guarantee you Final Fantasy 11 isn't even on here. It never makes these lists, which drives me nuts. But wow, like, come on, guys. Maybe it's on here somewhere. Every other Final Fantasy game is on here. I think I'm scrolling through the thing. Every single other one except for Final Fantasy 11. Wow, unbelievable. Okay, anyway, thank you so much for listening this week. All about RPGs. One of my favorite game genres. Check out Xenoblade Chronicles 3 if you're into that. It's a really good one. And thank you so much for listening. I will see you on the next episode to Gamers with Love.